Okay, I might completely lose you with this one, but does anyone remember the OG comedian with a guitar? Now, this was still back when people's feelings were in their infancy, but like a monster in a horror movie, slowly transforming. If there was a note or a lyric or a name that began to turn those hair follicles blue or turn a simple meat flute massage into misogyny, that name might be Stephen Lynch. Honestly, to a bunch of high schoolers fully chubbed for some edgy humor, or Avril Lavigne in some bondage pants and DZs, or any female that showed me attention, or didn't show me attention, or Miss Woodbury, or my best friend's mom asking me if I want another pudding cup, or my best friend when he took off his shirt and I caught a glimpse of side boob. Yeah, honestly, it didn't take too much to get me going, or finish me off based on my personal record in one day. 15.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that Stephen Craig Christ Lynch was one of my first big introductions into comedy, and especially into the dark, trashy, edgy, and sometimes self-deprecating humor that may be reflective in my own content. Now, I first heard of Stephen in 2007, and for my feeble mind back then, that seemed to be his peak. Because although his comedy and his music lived on my own material and the frequent people that I plagued with this dude's discography, I never really heard about him since. Mostly just a handful of friends that also vaguely remember hearing him for a brief period of time until fading into obscurity. But that's not the crap on his legacy, because he's still around, and he's still well loved, and he deserves that much, if not more, and this is my way of giving back for all that he did to shape what of a terrible monster I am today. So, we're going to briefly cover who he is and what he's best known for, before breaking into what he's been up to recently, or within the last nearly 2 decades, before sharing some information that you may or may not know about him. So, if that sounds like fun, or you just can't be asked to find something else worth clicking on for the next 10 minutes or so, stick around after my quick little plug, and we're going to dive into the legend that inspired and paved the way for humor to be taken a step further. From songs about a lovely lady with 2 sets of genitalia, the concerns of air travel from an experienced pilot's point of view, or even Christian fan fiction, Stephen Lynch had it all. And you can have it all too for the one low monthly price of... No, I'm just kidding. All I can really offer is my love and appreciation. But for as little as $1, you can help support my work for my Patreon. I'm hoping that someday I can start offering some bonus content or behind the scenes or something special. But for right now, it's only if you want to help pay for the essentials or upgrades to help make better content for you. Please don't feel obligated though. I only do this so that people know that I have a Patreon, and also to remind them not to forget that you can do so much by just leaving a like or a comment down below. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this or videos about weirdos that aren't me. Mostly. Alright, back to the video. Stephen Lynch was born on July 28, 1971 in Abington, Pennsylvania before his family relocated to Saginaw, Michigan. A big thing to note about Stephen is that although he is a comedian and a musician, he's always seen his music and performance as the forefront of his profession, allowing his comedy and stand-up to take a back seat. Now, this in no way means that his comedy is lacking, nor do I believe it diminishes who he is as a stand-up comedian. But it will help to explain why I believe that the early to mid-2000s is where his name and his work were so influential and groundbreaking, and also why, despite his continued work, you may be less likely to hear his name brought up in the comedy scene nowadays. During his childhood, Stephen would perform in community as well as musical theater, taking an interest into the performing arts before graduating from Western Michigan University with a Bachelor of Arts in Drama. 3 years out of university, and he would relocate to New York City in 1996 to pursue a career in acting. Not long after arriving, a local friend would suggest that he perform some of his comic songs that he wrote while still in college, which would be the start to Stephen's career in stand-up comedy. Hitting the local night scene, he would tour around the city, hitting various venues, including nightclubs and comedy clubs, and would begin to amass a small fan base that would follow his work. Now, around this time, he would also sign to the label record What Are Records, and see a lot of favorable publicity on the Opie and Anthony show. In 2000, Stephen would appear on Comedy Central Presents, which was considered one of the highest rated specials during that time, and later that year would release his first album, A Little Bit Special. To those of you familiar with Steven, you may already be aware of why his presence may have dipped in the last 2 decades, but for those of you still in the dark, well, it was the shock value and the edginess of his material. See, Steven had a way of lulling you into a false sense of security with a pretty voice and an acoustic guitar rhythm before blindsiding you with some of the most diabolical lyrics imaginable at the time.
I liked math and the spelling bee. Ed like talking to a tree or special ed. His mama dropped him on his head. Now she keeps him where? In the shed. 'Cause he's a little bit special.
He pulled no punches. You have to remember that the internet was still working on becoming what it is today, and so your personal comfort bubble just wasn't a thing. For a generation that was so easily becoming numb to the dangers of the world, lyrics about the mentally disabled, Aryan girlfriends, parricide, gerbils, if you don't know, don't ask, a complex relationship between father and son, and also a song about Halloween of all things, wouldn't do too much to upset an audience that was not only younger, but much more abrasive and capable of separating comedy or a joke from how we feel about that specific subject. And I want to mention that if you've clicked on this video and you really aren't familiar with Stephen Lynch's music, it's very well worth checking out. But viewer discretion, as none of his earliest work would even be remotely acceptable today, and I'm afraid of even sampling some of it, as it's probably going to be the quickest way to get my video demonetized. Now, according to Genius, his most popular albums are 3 Balloons, Lion, and My Old Heart, although I would be willing to dispute that. Despite more than likely being concluded on a statistic basis, I believe his most popular albums would be Superhero, The Craig Machine, and it's a close race between A Little Bit Special and 3 Balloons. With the latter of those albums being released in 2009, although his career has persisted through the 2010s and through the pandemic and is active to this day, it seems as though his lyrics and punchy song narratives have been tweaked just a bit for more sensitive audiences. Or at least that's entirely what I believe, and I can't confirm this. And it's not to say that he's caved to social pressures of retiring that style of comedy that set him apart from other comics of the time. I believe with any stand-up comedian, especially now, it's incredibly difficult to find work if you aren't willing to cave to what is and isn't accepted. And although Steven has had a massive cult following, I don't know that his name has preceded other comedy legends like Dave Chappelle or Louis C.K., who are big enough to push those boundaries just on their name alone. It's also equally possible that within the last decade, he's been more active in his family's lives. He married his wife back in 2003, and they've been together ever since. His private life is exactly that, and I don't really blame him for it. They currently reside in Michigan, and it seems that's where he likes to perform most often, as I'm sure it's just nice to be close to home. In fact, Steven tends to include his wife in many of his professional decisions, as every song gets ran past her before it even makes it to a live performance. And if it doesn't receive laughter, it gets scrapped and he starts again. I believe it's more than likely that Steven's just comfortable at home with his wife and his children, and he's happy to take time away from his career to be with them. And in doing so, he didn't push for fame the way that so many other comedians have. Sure, he isn't on world tours, performing at arenas and pissing off the general public with one vague joke about a group despite countless other jokes about every other group, and he isn't getting canceled for pulling his dick out on someone that he asked permission to prior, but he is still writing some fantastic songs, and he's doing it at his own time. At the start of the video, I mentioned that his music came before his comedy, and he seems to pull a lot of influence from Simon and Garfunkel or Joni Mitchell, and his tone and style have always represented that. The Craig Machine was one of the first of his albums I ever had the privilege of listening to, and in my opinion, it's one of the most popular albums, and a lot of that came from how the songs, although acoustic and some even very soft, can be extremely punchy and heavy and very rock influenced, and that really lent to what made the album so digestible on top of the premise surrounding most of the songs. If one viral video could change the life of a YouTuber forever, this album would have been that video, and essentially what put him on the big stage for some time and helped carry his legacy. It's hard to think without the Craig Machine that I would have listened past the first verse of any other song, just due to his influences and the feel of the songs being so far from what I would have normally listened to. Also, please, if you are a fan, don't let any of this make you think that I'm trying to undermine his work or say that he isn't a massive legend, because he is. But I'm just a lowly YouTuber trying to decipher why this iconic figure that shaped how I look at comedy and how he changed what I thought was socially acceptable to joke about, and how, at the end of the day, it's just a joke. On the other hand, if you've never heard of Steven, but now you have, I would highly recommend listening to any of his albums. But be warned that if you're easily offended, it might not be the right thing for you. But you just have to accept that at the end of the day, it's just a joke. Steven was a phenomenal comedian and music writer and performer, and he continues to create such a massive legacy with his name. He started with the desire to be an actor and was briefly given the opportunity as Robbie Hart from The Wedding Singer on Broadway, a musical based on the film starring Adam Sandler. Like most of us, he started a family and chose them and the quiet life over stardom. He continues to work this day, and hopefully soon, we will receive another tour or even a new album, as the last one released in 2019, I believe. But thank you so much for all that you've done to inspire me and people like me, Steven. I'm sure those watching can agree. If you made it this far, please feel free to share your stories about Steven, or how you were introduced, or even just your favorite song down in the comments below. Patrons are on screen now. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to help the channel out. A big shout out to my editor. Thank you for all that you do. His links, as well as the rest of them, will be in the description below. But until next time, be well.